we will begin to kick off this session, this special session, with Ambassador Penny Williams. But before we give the floor to Ambassador Penny Williams, I think it would be very very fruitful or very appropriate if my immediate past president, who is also an ambassador and an ambassador to Australia and the United Kingdom, and whom I first met actually in Wollongong when he was the ambassador to Australia, or in Canberra, our ambassador, the Indonesian ambassador in Canberra. So I will allow my immediate past president, His Excellency Ambassador Hamzah Taib, to begin on behalf of IABC to kick off this session. So Your Excellency Ambassador Hamzah Taib, please feel free to kick off the session before we move forward to the special session with Ambassador Ibu Penny Williams. Please, Pa Hamzah.
George, thank you so very much for those words, very kind words. But you're giving me the honor, first of all, to welcome Ibu Penny Williams to be in Jakarta, to be the Australian ambassador in Indonesia. And Ibu Penny, I know your Indonesian is much better than my English. So but this shows the relationship. I mean, you speak perfect Indonesian. That will open doors for your busy schedule and building the relationship further, strengthening the relationship, putting it on a solid basis. And George, on your behalf, on everybody's behalf, Ibu Penny, I should like to welcome you. Welcome to Jakarta and wish you all the best. And we are here to help. We are all here to strengthen the relationship of our two big countries being neighbors, and we will always be neighbors. We will always be there. So, George, I think I'll give the floor back to you so that we can start with the discussions. Thank you. Thank you very much. And welcome again, Ibu Penny.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Hamzah. And now we will begin to kick off this special session with Ambassador Ibu Penny Williams. Ibu Penny, this is her second appointment as ambassador, and before, Ibu Penny was the ambassador or the High Commissioner of Australia in Malaysia, and she has a unique experience throughout her career. But one thing that caught my eye was obviously you're a Tasmanian, Ibu Penny, you're Tasmanian, and I've been to the island many times. Very beautiful island, Tasmania, Hobart and Launceston. So. And then secondly is you are the first woman ambassador to Australian woman ambassador to Indonesia. So congratulations. And thirdly, Ibu Penny, like Ambassador Hamzah Taib shared with us, actually studied in Indonesia. So her Indonesian is better than my English too, I believe. So thank you, Ibu Penny, for joining us today and providing the time. So now I'll give the floor to you, Ibu Penny, to share about yourself and how you envision the relationship or the economic bilateral relationship and the business-to-business relationship between Indonesia and Australia in the future. So Ibu Penny, the Zoom floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Pat George, and thank you everybody for the lovely welcome this morning. I'm having the best morning. I get to kind of engage with the IABC and to talk about my passion for really developing the economic engagement between Australia and Indonesia. And when I get off this call, I'm actually going into a launch by the Asia Education Foundation of rationale for Indonesian language and studies in Australian education called Why Indonesia Matters in Our Schools, which is really quite critical. But also this morning, I was very pleased to be able to write to Indonesian ministers to let them know that the do not travel restriction on Australians has been lifted, and that we're back to business as usual in terms of mobility of Australians. I mean, that's just such a significant thing for all of us on this call today. I think that, as Pat George said, we really have been, IABC has done an amazing job being able to engage virtually through this period, and the fact that you've got so many new members, I think, is just fantastic. But the prospect very shortly that we can really resume mobility between the two countries is really going to make a difference to what we're trying to achieve. If I can just say that the IABC, I just really wanted to acknowledge the IABC and the critical role it plays in enhancing economic relations between Indonesia and Australia. And I think that was really clearly demonstrated during the IA-CEPA negotiations to making sure, I mean, IABC just made a really critical role in AIBC to ensure that the agreement really did reflect the issues of interest to businesses operating or seeking to operate in Indonesia. And I'm really looking forward to working with you all throughout my term here and to start again the annual gathering of members at the residence as soon as we possibly can. Just a few quick comments from me on sort of the state of play, I suppose, in terms of the economic relationship. Actually, while the bilateral trade declined in 2020, goods trade was remarkably resilient, and actually this calendar year it's looking remarkably resilient as well. And as you all know, in 2020, with IA-CEPA's entry into force, almost 98% of products from Indonesia entered into Australia tariff-free. That's actually quite significant because it's actually one of the highest utilisation rates of any Australian FTA partner. So while the goods trade has got some room in it, the fact that the FTA utilisation rate is high, I think is a good signal to us. And obviously, IA-CEPA removes tariffs and it provides increased certainty for investors. But as I've spoken and we've discussed with a number of you before, we know that, and we're not going to pretend that it kind of takes away or solves all the barriers to trade and investment. The embassy has a role in making representations on behalf of any companies where there's specific issues affected by government policies. And it won't always yield quick results, but we really see that as an important role that we can play. We'd like to hear from you. We like to know where the barriers are. We like to know where the issues are and how we can resolve it. But at the same time, we're really committed to sort of driving that sense of opportunity. And as George said, with the Minister for Trade, Tourism and Investment visit recently, very much that was directed at having conversations between CEOs, talking about the leadership of the business community in driving this economic engagement. One thing that we've been really pleased to get off the ground recently is the Catalyst program, part of IA-CEPA. So IA-CEPA is the first bilateral trade agreement that actually has a dedicated economic cooperation agreement worth about $40 million. And this is, I mean, it's called Catalyst because it's intended to be a catalyst to sort of catalyse greater two-way trade and investment. So Catalyst is up and running. It's got an ambitious agenda. Todd or someone will put up in the chat their website because there's a portal there for businesses to submit ideas for activities, practical activities that help expand trade and investment. And Catalyst is also holding virtual information sessions for businesses in Indonesia. They're planning events to focus on regional areas, particularly Bali, East Java and Eastern Indonesia. As I said, the pandemic has made it difficult, although has been quite a bit of momentum, as I said, in the goods trade. And as I said, the Trade Minister visited and was able to launch the Blueprint for Trade and Investment with Indonesia. That document is primarily directed at Australian CEOs and boards to draw their attention to opportunities here. And of course, you're all ahead of the curve on this. But it's really quite important for business to be able to play a role to talk to business about what the opportunities are. And that's why that CEO roundtable that took place during the Trade Minister's visit was quite important, because I think CEOs are able to talk around the opportunities, their own experience, and also myth bust. So as we all know, there's still some stereotypes that stand in the way of the trade and investment relationship. But when CEOs sit down and kind of roll their sleeves up and start talking to each other, I actually really think that makes a difference. But just in conclusion, I've said to a number of you before that my priority here as ambassador through my term is really to expand the economic engagement and the people-to-people links, which is why I'm so happy this morning to be talking to you and then doing the launch on the Why Indonesia Matters in Schools. IABC members are pivotal to both of those, to the economic engagement and also to the people-to-people links. You're the people on the ground developing business relationships, creating new investments. In a sense, you are the ambassadors for the bilateral relationship, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you in this session, but that ongoing communication between us so that we're able to reinforce our efforts, that we're able to problem solve on your behalf, you're able to problem solve on our behalf, and really I'm here to support you in any way that I possibly can, as are my team. But with that, George, I'll leave it to for questions.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Ambassador Ibu Penny Williams. And now, as we move forward, there are some questions that have surfaced to ask you, Ambassador. But I want to thank you again for those remarks. And we are very enthusiastic, Ambassador, in supporting the IACPA and also supporting the embassy and you yourself as the ambassador in promoting and advocating the success of IACPA. So we have several questions coming up, and I'm going to allow several of them to come live, and then I'll read some of them also, and they're clustered in themes. Yeah, so I'll announce who asked the question and the particular questions they asked, and we'll structure it in themes, so it'll allow you, Ambassador, to answer them based on the topic. But first, as pertaining to IACPA, I want to give the floor to Pak Noke Kiroyan first to come live and share his question, and also maybe introduce yourself, Pak Noke. Thank you. Please, Pak Noke.
Well, thank you, Pak George. I don't want to monopolize the discussion, so I won't ask too many questions, but I'm a member of IBC since '97 when I returned to Indonesia. I've been ever since in my different roles, and I served as president of the IBC 4 times. I think so far nobody has beaten me in that respect. But I would like just to ask one question. How do you see, this is my favorite topic, because in the early years of my return to Indonesia, late 90s, there's always been a discussion about people-to-people relationships that is an impediment to getting more of the economic relationship, because despite the nice figures, but basically Indonesia and Australia are not getting much out of each other. And that's one purpose maybe of IACPA, to get more bilateral trade going on. But so far we haven't seen too much progress. And how do you see that in the near future? Because we cannot talk about 10 years from now, but say the next 5 years. And that would be my question to you, Ambassador. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak Noke. And Pak Noke, Ambassador, is a senior member of our board, former past presidents 4 times, as he shared, and also a very well-known business personality in Indonesia. Led Rio Tinto at one time and led many major companies in Indonesia in the past. So thank you, Pak Noke. And to that also point, I think Pak Mark Fitzgerald is with us from ANZ, the CEO of ANZ Indonesia. He would like to ask the question, and he will come live.
Oh, goodness, I wasn't quite prepared for that, but thank you, George, and good to see you, Ambassador. I guess just picking up, it's fantastic, you know, in terms of the next meeting you're going to with the Asia Education Foundation and talking about why Indonesia matters. I mean, we're products of a system, I think, decades ago, an education system where actually I feel that there was a lot of encouragement in terms of understanding of Bahasa and understanding of Indonesia and Bahasa being taught at schools. And I feel that in recent decades, that's really dropped off, and consequently the level of understanding and engagement has probably dropped off as well. How hopeful are you that initiatives like this can drive meaningful change in terms of building that, rebuilding and growing that understanding between Australia and Indonesia?
Thank you. Thank you, Pak Mark.
Thank you, Pak George.
Thank you, Pak Mark, the CEO of ANZ Indonesia. And so, Ambassador, I'm going to allow you to answer those questions first. So please, Ambassador.
Thank you, Pat George, and thank you, Pat Noppy, for your question. I think it's a really important one to start off with. I think that many of us have talked around, is the economic engagement relationship underdone for many years? And I think many of us would agree that it has been. I think that IA-CEPA plays a really important role, obviously, and I talked about tariff-free access, but really what is the, beyond that, what can it do? And I do think it is about the head-turning effect. I do think it is about companies that may not have otherwise looked at Indonesia and vice versa, seeing something in it. And if we're able to support that with the sorts of initiatives like the blueprint, like CEO roundtables, like workshops, seminars, catalysts to actually practically engage, I think that makes a difference. My sense since I've been here has been that it has had a head-turning effect. There has been things like Monash actually opening is something hugely significant. It's the first foreign campus in Indonesia. Now, Monash has put in a lot of work to make that happen, but I think that IA-CEPA has really helped that. And we've also seen some other big investments recently in terms of Sun Cable, for example, and as you know, Fortescue Futures is also looking at it. One of the things, and I don't know if it was Pat George who actually mentioned it, but one of the things that came up in the CEO roundtable in relation to that IA-CEPA head turning was the notion of ecosystems and the idea that once we've got some of these bigger investments, and even if you look at what Aspen's doing in West Java in medical, what builds around it? What does it pull through? What is the kind of the vocational education and other aspects of training that it might pull through? What are the opportunities for SMEs, Indonesian and Australian? What are the opportunities for other countries? And I think Monash, for example, and other tertiary institutions have a role to play there as well. So I'm actually quite encouraged by the head-turning effect of IA-CEPA, and I'm quite encouraged by the fact that Australian companies are looking at different sectors for the sorts of, so renewables, sort of energy broadly, renewables, health, education, where there really are some kind of synergies that I think that we can see. We always talk about, and it's true that the inputs into Indonesia also should be growing in terms of Australian imports from Australia, whether that's horticultural products or cattle. But I do think it is, you know, we'll see goods trade increase. Hopefully now we'll see the services trade not just back to where it was, but actually to grow further. I mean, it's always when we look at the trade and investment figures, we often don't look at the services trade numbers, and actually that's what really does drive the relationship. But I do think that the head-turning effect, the sorts of Australian entities that are interested in investing here will really make a difference. For me, it's quite sort of palpable. Just on Mark's question around Indonesian language and Indonesian understanding, I think that there's a lot of talk about this, and it's, you know, there's not necessarily terribly much evidence base to kind of understand what the issue is. But what I would say is that it's just a lot more of competition. There's a whole lot of factors that go into it, including a lot. I mean, globalization in itself has created within the Australian school system an interest in a broader range of languages. I always use the example of Korean. You know, the numbers of kids enrolled in Korean in first year Australian National University is higher than the number of kids enrolled in Indonesian. Now, is that because Indonesian is not a good language to learn? No, Korean's kind of like got a soft power advantage. It's attractive. There's more kids learning about Asia. There's more kids doing languages. There's more kids internationally exposed. They just may not be as many doing Indonesian. So there's a competition there in the sort of soft power arena that's kind of sort of difficult to understand. Sort of difficult to sort of break down. But from my perspective, which is why I'm involved in this launch, and the Australia-Indonesia Institute, which is funded by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, has funded this to make the case for high school principals when they're making decisions about what languages kids in their school should be learning, what the advantages are of learning Indonesian. It's probably also worth mentioning, up until COVID, under the new Colombo plan, more young Australians come to Indonesia than any other country under the new Colombo plan. So the interest is definitely there, and the commitment is there in terms of engagement. And there's so many sort of bridge school programs that have continued through COVID, albeit virtually. And I'm just looking forward to, as soon as possible, getting those visits back and up and running in person, because I think that really does matter in terms of people-to-people links.
Thank you, Ambassador Penny. And now we'll have several themes of questions coming out. And for the purpose of time, because we have about an hour here, or now 30 minutes coming in, so I will share with you these questions and who they're coming from. Now, this next question is related to one of the main pillars in the bilateral in the IACPA implementation, that is in education. So we have two questions coming out in terms of education. First is from Ibu Mariam Kartika Tresni, representative, country representative, University of Technology, Sydney, and her question is on students regarding students returning to Australia, when or how that would be able to be processed or be able to be conducted. And then the second question is from Western Sydney University, Ian Sebastian, who's also with us today. And that question is regarding to President Joko Widodo's recently launched industry roadmap, which is making Indonesia 4.0. And that is a pivotal economic pillar to boost the manufacturing industry's competitiveness through the use of technology. How do you see Australia contributing to supporting this 4.0 roadmap, which is making Indonesia 4.0, particularly from an education sector point of view? So from the education sector, we have two questions coming out, and that is from Ibu Mariam Kartika Tresni from UTS and from Ian Sebastian from Western Sydney University. So Ambassador Penny,
thank you.
I give the floor back.
Yeah. Thank you. And it's so great to see so many universities on the line. I do think that the education relationship is fundamental to the increased economic engagement. And one thing that I would say that through COVID, sometimes there are silver linings to tragedy. What I can see on the part of the Australian educational sector is an increase in different creativity and different ways of operating in Indonesia. So you can see that in sort of bricks and mortar with Monash opening here. But clearly universities are thinking about different ways of engaging and what partnerships might look like going into the future. In terms of students returning to Australia, I can't wait. Obviously, we are moving forward with various announcements in relation to fully vaccinated Australian citizens, permanent residents and their families being able to fly back into Australia in Sydney and Melbourne without quarantine. I think that's a really important first step. And while the government's prioritising Australians returning home, the Prime Minister has said that foreign students will be among the next cohort. Quite importantly, the Therapeutic Goods Administration considers Sinovac a recognised vaccine for entry to Australia, which is going to make it so much easier for Indonesians to come to Australia when restrictions ease. So I guess to Ibu Mariam's question, I don't have the exact dates. I don't have an absolute insight into all of this, but we are working on the basis that we're moving forward, and we hope to see Indonesian students returning to Australia very soon. But at the same time, we're really pleased to see Australian universities and other education providers looking at different ways of engaging with Indonesia and expanding their partnerships. In terms of Ian's question about making Indonesia 4.0 a pivotal economic pillar, skills development really is a core part of IACPA, and it has been the regret, I suppose, of the past year and a half that we haven't been able to really push forward the mobility parts of IACPA. So we really are looking forward now to being able to drive that as mobility restrictions lift. the Catalyst program has skills development as a focus. And Catalyst is working on a TVET clearinghouse concept to help match Australian training expertise with industry demand in Indonesia. I mean, there's some of you on the line who are really expert in this, I understand, so I don't want to sort of oversimplify it. But it's not all, it's a bit like Noki said, like we've been talking about some things for so long, like VET and how can we increase VET, and some of you work very actively in that field. The two things don't always line up. So the VET funding model in Australia and what the demand is in Indonesia. So hopefully this clearinghouse can actually be a better matching process for Australian training expertise. And as I said, I do think there's some greater opportunities in the higher education sector in terms of future liberalisation. And I think Australian institutions that are looking at other investors and how they might build ecosystems or looking at specific sectors is going to be quite critical to that. So we do see the education and the VET sector as critical to the economic engagement, and we do want to be able to work with Indonesia to help meet its future human development demands, given how extensive they are and given the age of the population.
Thank you, Ibu Penny. So obviously education, a major pillar within the IACPA. Human capital development probably cuts through all of the, you might say, sectors of engagements between the economic engagements between Indonesia and Australia. So thank you very much, Ibu Penny, for those remarks and answers towards the questions that were presented to us by UTS, Ibu Mariam, and by Western Sydney University, Pak Ian Sebastian. So thank you, Ibu Penny. Now, we from education, we're jumping to mining. Yeah, mining, which is an area that is significant in our economic relationship. So this is from Andrew Prout, from Andrew Prout, BIS Industries. His question is, are there easier pathways for Indonesians currently working in the mining sector to work in the Australian mining sector? So this is an interesting question. So please, Ambassador, I give the floor back to you to answer that question regarding to the mining sector.
Thanks, and I was really glad that Andrew asked this question actually, because it is something that we've been working on. I guess there's a couple of things, which is that, of course, Indonesians can apply for a temporary skill shortage visa that kind of covers off on the mining sector, but there's actually two specific products linked to IACPA. The first is a skills development exchange that allows companies in the mining sector, and actually METs more broadly, to send staff from Indonesia to Australia or vice versa for up to six months. And so what this uses a special visa subclass that doesn't require the full sponsorship process as the TSS visa. These are the sorts of things that we're so proud that exist in IACPA that we've unfortunately been unable to unleash because of the issues around the border. So that's a really good one. The other is an MOU on workplace-based training, and I know this has been of interest to the mining sector, but also some other sectors. So under the MOU, Australia is guaranteed to allow up to 200 Indonesians per year to come to Australia for on-the-job training in various sectors, including in the mining sector. Look, I put Indonesia section of FTA as in free trade agreement. Nation staff for their development. Thank
you, Ambassador. So there are opportunities in the future, on this matter, and I've noticed also in multiple sectors, in regards to this. I've been seeing it in the news, so I'm sure that's very something we can hope for to begin to process in the future. Now we have two questions that are similar, related to the blueprint that just was launched, that I was honored to attend, Ambassador, last month when Minister Dan Tihan was here in Indonesia with our minister, with the Indonesian Minister of Trade, Muhammad Lutfi. So that is this question is coming from Jennifer Matthews from AIBC. So we have our friends from AIBC also joining. Jennifer Matthews is coming also from Perth. And I noticed Peter Craven also, the president of IABC Tasmania, is also joined today. So the question is, what strategies are proposed to promote opportunities outlined in the recent blueprint? So there's a recent blueprint that was launched, and what are the strategies that are proposed in regards to promote the opportunities between Indonesia and Australia? So I'll allow you to answer that question, Ambassador. Please, Ambassador.
Thanks, Pat George. So, I mean, I think the blueprint is a really impressive document that actually does give a blueprint and some guidance. It busts some myths. It broadens kind of sectoral understanding, predominantly for Australians looking to do business in Indonesia. But a document is not worth it if you just kind of create the document, issue it, and put it on the shelf. It really needs sustained promotion. And there's a commitment on the part of CEOs, on the part of people who were involved in developing the blueprint, to really go out and publicise the blueprint, the sorts of themes that the blueprint brings out, sometimes quite sectorally specific. Sally and I are speaking at a Market Insights program next week, I guess, on the 4th of November. That's an opportunity to kind of engage with a broader cohort of Australian businesses about the opportunities in Indonesia. And while it's predominantly for Australian businesses, I've started doing my provincial visits. I was in West Java the week before last. I'm off to Makassar on the weekend. Then I'll be going to Surabaya and on to Bali. I'll be using that document when I engage with Indonesian authorities to show the sorts of things that we're doing, and also the sorts of things that they might want to kind of play back into the Australian business community. As I said, it's fundamentally a document for an Australian audience and for the Australian business community, but many of the ideas and sectors highlighted in the blueprint are a subject of industry and government focus, so it's quite important for me to be able to engage provincial governments there as well. I know, Jenny, that obviously AIBC has been really pivotal in this, particularly in terms of the healthcare working group. And Austrade is now coming in and really, I would say, actively, heavily doing this business matching and business support in the key areas like skills and training. I just talked about healthcare, digital technology and resources and energy services. So there's a whole lot of webinars, business matching sectors, wherever I'm involved in reaching out to a broader, I think some of you might have been also dialed in for the session that the Asia Society did a couple of weeks ago. So any opportunity, I mean, Sally will be doing her thing with the Austrade people. We're really getting into sectors, webinars, quite practical. I'll be taking the blueprint and talking to that broader business community. And once again, highlighting opportunities, but as much as that myth busting and getting people to just look with fresh eyes at the opportunity that Indonesia and opportunity the economic engagement has to play. Government can play a really important role, but really, once again, kind of calling on you, I suppose, it's business. When business talks to business, that's what makes the difference, really. So we can have the blueprint, we can open the door, but when business talks to business, that's actually what makes the difference, I think, in pulling through. I think, yeah, in terms of that. Take every opportunity to really push.
Thank you, Ambassador. So I think for everyone here, you can access the blueprint through the IABC Secretariat, because as Ambassador Penny has just shared, that is a guide for the governments. Yeah. So from us, from the private sector, we can refer to that and we can utilize that blueprint in order to see what strategies or what opportunities we can explore with the Indonesian-Australian economic relationship. So thank you, Ambassador, for sharing that that particular matter regarding the blueprint itself. Now, the next question is coming, and this is the theme of this is post-COVID. Yeah. So there's two questions coming in from Billy Lee, and that is Billy Lee from Barnusa Widnell, and also from John Vijayarangam from Potentia HR Consulting. So from Billy Lee, after this COVID pandemic is over, what are the plans as Australian ambassador to enhance the cooperation between Indonesia and Australia? So this is in the context of post-COVID. And then from John Vijayarangam from Potentia HR Consulting, in the post-COVID era, so post-COVID, is there any change in Australia's plan for growth and development of Australia business in Indonesia? So this is a unique question because it's forecasting post-COVID. So how do we forecast that? So please, Ambassador, share your thoughts on these questions.
Thank you.
Please.
And I must say, they're really good questions. And I didn't quite imagine that we would be where we are today in terms of Australian borders reopening and that kind of sense of forward momentum and how do we actually work with and live with COVID and how do we start to think about mobility and travel between the two countries, between businesses and also between government officials. So even in this very short time, we've had 3 ministerial visits last month, and I'm anticipating we'll have a lot more sort of visit to and fro. So I can see the light at the end of the tunnel in a sense already, and what that means. So I'm really excited. We've got the tools, and I think that the fact that we had IA-CEPA, that we had the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership ahead of COVID, the architecture put us in a very good place to ensure that we didn't lose momentum. The momentum that we haven't been able to maintain to the degree that any of us would like, and I think that's the IABC as well as the embassy as well as business, has been that face-to-face contact, and I feel like that's in touching range. And when we've got that face-to-face contact and when we've got that mobility, we'll see really the aspects of IA-CEPA unfurl that we've been looking to. So I don't think we need new things, but we'll be able to now to really fully realise the potential of some of that, the mobility, the visas that were asked about before. There's some other new tools. We've talked about the blueprint. There's opportunities also around a new agricultural visa, which I think is quite interesting. Now that's still a work in progress, but I think that also opens up some real opportunities. As I said, I think that the Australian education sector has had a bit of a rethink about how it operates offshore and what its mix of overseas students compared to partnerships, compared to bricks and mortar in other countries is changing as well. So there's obviously a lot of interest and opportunity there. I think we'll continue to leverage our digital engagement. I think this goes for all of you, I'm sure, in your own businesses. You can see that there were some benefits from operating virtually. There's some things that we get from it and there's some things that we've lost, and we need to be able to capture both of those to the benefit of the bilateral relationship and to the benefit of economic engagement. I think that we realise that we don't always have to get on a plane every time that we need to meet, but actually sometimes it is good to get on a plane so we can understand the nuance. I'm really looking forward to Australian tourists coming back to Bali. That 1.3 million visitors every year makes a huge difference to the Indonesian economy, and it also makes a huge difference to our services trade. So I'm very optimistic that we're coming out the other side, and I'm very pleased that we have got some very good architecture in place that sustained us, but we've got a lot of room in there to take it forward even more. So and we'll keep working sort of with the digital, in the digital space, in the virtual space, and using that, but also hope to have more people to people links. I'm not sure if that's also answered the question from John. I guess there's one thing, and I'm so not an expert, but there's people on the line who definitely are. But they definitely, one of the things that we've learned through COVID is that there are more collaborative opportunities in the digital economy. in both Australia and both Indonesia, the fact that people have become so much more used to engaging, buying, selling digitally, I think changes the landscape for our economic engagement as well. So, and there's a real sort of interest, I think, in both Australia and Indonesia about what that actually means. Obviously, from an Australian perspective, people look at this 270 million people market and see the high level of sort of hand phone use and what that means. I think and I think there's some real interest in that. At the same time, I can see that in Indonesia, there's quite a lot of interest in some of the skill sets that are in Australia in that space as well. So, yeah, I mean, that's a very sort of broad way to say I'm optimistic. I think we're getting there quicker than we thought in terms of things opening up. We've got some good architecture in place. We've done pretty well despite COVID. And Australia and Indonesia obviously just really want to work together to ensure that both of our economies recover from COVID. And I certainly at a political level, I've had so much interest and engagement from Indonesian ministers in the economic space about what can we drive, what can we do together.
Thank you, Ambassador. So hopefully we can tackle this COVID. Obviously, Jakarta is level 2. Where I'm at is level 2, and hopefully, as you were sharing, once this is under control, we can take off. Yeah, the business.
Well, I think, but George, Jakarta has got a vaccination rate of around 80%.
Yeah.
So, which is kind of getting up to the sorts of which is about the same sort of vaccination rates we're seeing in major Australian cities. That makes a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, Ambassador, because thank you for pointing that out. I think that's a key point, that you're seeing vaccination rates really going up very high, 80%, and at par with cities in Australia and also around the world, developed cities around the world. So we should be okay. Hopefully, let's pray that we can get this under control and we can move forward with business in our lives. So thank you, Ambassador. Now, this cluster of questions is our technical questions. So I'll present this to you, Ambassador, and feel free to answer how you would like to answer this. This is from Michael Master from BlueScope Distribution, and also coming from Martin Eddy from TTW Indonesia. So from Michael Master, BlueScope Distribution, the question, is it known when Indonesia will allow for SNI auditors to continue with the audit schedules? They have been locked down due to COVID and are not allowing desktop audits. And from Martin Eddy from TTW Indonesia, the question is, the 45-day change to ATO definition of tax resident for private sector expats, this is very short for unexpected occasional situations such as health. 90 days would be much more fair and manageable. Many in IABC would ask, is the embassy able to help voice this? Yeah, so these are two questions related to technical issues there. And I'll allow you to share your thoughts on this, Ambassador. Please, Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Pat George. And I'm not an expert on either of them, but can I say, we love to get this sort of feedback, and when there's actually practical issues that we can either send back to Canberra, raise with government departments there, or raise here, it's really important for us to be able to hear from you in this regard. So thank you both to Michael and Martin for those questions. And if anyone ever has any particular issues, even if you think that you've got an issue but you can't quite put it together, we're always really happy to hear, because we might have another part of the story or another angle. So it's really useful for us to hear about these things. So in terms of audits, what my team are telling me, and actually they've told me before Michael's question, that we know that there's been some issues around audits, including for some agricultural commodities that have been a bit complicated for us. And I think it's about the conflicting regulations around, as Michael says, the conflicting regulations that sort of that prevent or didn't foresee, I suppose, more like didn't foresee why you would want a virtual audit. So we've actually, once we saw this question, we'll bring this up with the national certification body. So we'll follow that up formally with the national certification body. So thank you for drawing that to our attention. On the other one, I'm kind of less clear, I suppose. I think what this means is the 45-day change to the ATO definition of a tax resident. And I think that was a measure in the last budget. And this was, I think the recommendation was to reduce compliance costs for sort of globally mobile individuals and their employers. My understanding is actually there's several factors that will determine residency, not just the time spent in country, but we'll also confirm and pass back similar feedback that we've heard from the expat community to Treasury. So I don't have the answers on both of those, but we'll definitely pass it back and follow up. And Peter says I just see Peter says 74% of second doses.
Yes, thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, that's great. So
94,
sorry.
Yeah, 94 second vaccinations, yeah, for Jakarta, right? Yeah, so that's great, So, but thank you, Ambassador, for those two questions, answering those two questions, because those are technical questions, but you've answered it very well, and I think our friends here will be very happy to be able to, very happy that they're able to share this, and maybe you'll be able to share this with the relevant authorities. So now the last question, or the last cluster of questions, is back to the future. Back to the future. So the last question is coming in from Nick Graham of RSM and from Rahmani Shadrina of Linfox. Linfox is a big Australian distribution company, logistics company, very successful in Indonesia. And now from Nick Graham, RSM, the question is, the need to improve the level of investments between Australia and Indonesia is constantly raised. It seems, it seems there is no effective improvement. What steps can the Australian government and embassy take to create a process for meaningful improvement? So that's from Nick Graham, RSM. And then from Rahmani Shadrina from Linfox. After your visit to Linfox distribution center, WDC, so you visited Linfox, any idea on how the Australian government can promote Australian businesses in the country or in Indonesia? So two very good questions from Nick Graham, RSM, and from Rahmani Shadrina, Linfox. And Ambassador, I give you the floor to answer these questions.
Thank you. I might just start with Rahmani's question first. So I was really pleased 2 weeks ago to go to the Linfox Distribution Centre. It is amazing. I can't explain the scale of it. So that was great because it gave me an understanding of the sorts of issues that Linfox is doing. It gave me an understanding of what a big Australian company was doing here, their challenges, the opportunities for them. But the most important thing for me is that I have a picture. I can tell the story. So whenever I talk to a minister, whether it's an Australian minister or an Indonesian minister, I have a picture in my head of that distribution centre and what Linfox is doing, and I can talk to the extent, I can talk to the sorts of things that they're doing and really kind of push a sense of an Australian company's commitment to it. So I really welcome the opportunity to do field visits, to do site visits. It helps me understand things, but it gives me a mind picture that I can then talk about to other ministers, and that when I'm doing speeches, when the team are doing things about what Australian companies, we're actually talking about something that we've seen, and that actually makes a huge difference. So that's one part. I think I did a bit of media about that. We put out a press release. I did some tweeting, but when I next talk to an Indonesian minister, I'll talk to them about what I saw at Linfox and how amazing it is, and that this is a big Australian company that's really committed to working into Indonesia. As I said at the outset, in terms of what else can we do working with Australian businesses in the country, we're always happy to hear about specific barriers or specific issues that you're facing. or specific ideas that you have, and we'll take those up. We've got a big team in the embassy, and that's our job. Our job is to promote, help you problem solve, issues that you might have. And as you know, Sally Dean from Australia and Tim Stapleton, who's our Minister Councillor, Economic and Investment and Infrastructure, are both on the IABC board. So you're able to bring issues to their direct attention, but also happy to come back to us through our business engagement email. So I'm always happy to come and visit companies and actually get a picture to be able to tell the story of something that I've seen myself about what Australian companies are doing here. In terms of the level of investment, absolutely. I think there are, I've already mentioned that there are some sort of really quite prospective projects around at the moment. The Sun Cable investment is quite an interesting one. Aspen Doctors Health Infrastructure Project in West Java is amazing, the depth and breadth of that. And I've mentioned Monash, and I know that there's some other Australian educational institutions. So I think we have seen some significant investment announcements. Sometimes it's difficult to quantify the investment, where it's the way that it's coming through. Certainly that's the case for Indonesian investment into Australia, because often it occurs indirectly through regional headquarters in third markets, so we can't always track it. But I actually think that we've got a good investment story to tell at the moment. My sense is that there is interest, and there's interest in sectors that Australian companies may not have looked at before, or they're looking at the way they might do things differently. So once again, I don't want to kind of overstate things, but I'm actually quite optimistic about the investment story.
Well, thank you, Ambassador, for answering that last cluster of questions, and for that optimistic note. I mean, that's a very optimistic note that we are motivated by what you've just shared. And I know we're coming to the top of the hour, and I know you have another event to go to. So we will begin to conclude this special session, and hopefully this is the first of many sessions with our members, because as you notice, we have a lot of a good crowd here of CEOs and leaders from various multi-sectors that are part of the member base of IABC. And so, including this session, I want to give a chance to one of our senior board members, and also one of the senior Australian business persons in Indonesia, to provide a concluding remark. But before he does that, let me also recognize one of our past president who has also joined here, Pak Chris Listoya. Thank you, Pak Chris, for joining us. The past president of IABC has joined us today. So we have past presidents, the current board is here, members are here, and leaders and CEOs of various sectors are joining us today. So Pak Peter Fanning, please provide concluding remarks on this very special session with Ambassador Ibu Penny Williams. Pak Peter, I give the floor to you.
Thanks, George. Ambassador Penny, it's a very positive experience to have our ambassador with us in Indonesia, even if for the time being, physical meetings are not advisable, and this will change, of course. But in the meantime, please be aware that we are very appreciative of having our representative with us. And we thank you sincerely for taking the time to consider and share your thoughts on some of the broader issues we must deal with. It's tried to say that at this time, it doesn't really matter where people are located while we are dealing with each other online. This may apply in some circumstances, and it has been good to know your staff are always ready to assist us wherever they are located. But in matters of leadership and effective representation, physical presence is everything and speaks volumes. And I think we've seen ample evidence of that in the experiences that you're having recently and in the comments that you have made. So Ambassador Penny, thank you very much for your time and for your presence here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pat Peter. Thank you very much for those very generous comments. Can I just say thank you so much to the IABC for the support that you've given me already in the 6 months that I've been here. It's been invaluable. I really appreciate these sorts of opportunities. I really appreciate the support that you give to the embassy. We've got a common goal, and it's really great to be working with such an enthusiastic team. As I said at the top of the meeting, it's so good to see that you've got so many new members. I'm taking that as a sign of real enthusiasm in the relationship. I'm so looking forward to working with you all during the term. Very happy to do any of these sorts of events at any time, formal, informal. I'm really looking forward to welcoming you all to the residence as soon as we possibly can do that. And I keep saying, I feel like we're in touching range. But really thank you to all of you. And it's been just a delight to work with you up until now, and I'm really looking forward to working with you for the rest of my term.
Thank you, Ambassador Penny Williams, for this special session, for providing time to be with us in this special session in a conversation with you, Ambassador. And we hope that this will be the first of many frequent conversations we shall have, be it online and also, as Peter shared and as you shared, hopefully in the near future, we can meet face-to-face and have sessions with you face-to-face. So thank you, Ambassador Penny Williams, for providing the time. And thank you to our board, our members who have joined us today. With that, we salute you all, as in the wise words of AC/DC. I always like to mention AC/DC, my favorite band coming out of Australia. So in the wise words of AC/DC, we salute you all. So thank you and have a good day. Success to you all, and stay safe and keep well. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ambassador. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, George.
Thank you.